welcome to this conversation. I have Mary Hopkins here with me on the line, as they say. Mary, if I am correctly informed, you and Dom, when you came to Grace, actually got drawn in on false pretenses with a mistake on our website.
Yes,
What
that's
happened there?
correct. Well, we were sitting here and I must have been looking online and I said to John, do you know there's a church here that's got a meeting on Christmas Day? I said, wouldn't it, because we didn't have family then. And I said, wouldn't it be really nice if we could go to church on Christmas Day? So I sent off to Graham and he came back and said, sorry, but the website hasn't been changed. There isn't a service on Christmas Day, but asked if he could come round and meet with us and see us. And we started coming to Grace after that.
Brilliant. Well, we're very glad that God used that mistake to bring you both to Grace. Well, isolation, social lockdown has affected all of us over these last weeks, hasn't it? And it's hard in various ways. We've said that each of us is going to be experiencing what's going on in a different way because of our circumstances. But as a church, we are a body. We're connected to one another. We want to know how each of us is experiencing what's going on. We want to care and love and pray for one another. So we thought we'd have this conversation now with Mary, just to particularly think through how the effects of lockdown might be affecting those who are locked down on their own. Mary, I know you've spoken to a number of people at Grace and some people beyond Grace.
Yeah.
You've been thinking about what it is to be living on your own generally. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that?
Well, what came to my mind really is, how does God view living alone? Every time I thought about it. And there's a man called Matthew Henry from the past who said that God was sad for Adam's solitude. And I thought that was rather an interesting way to put it. And God said, it's not good for man to live alone. I will make a helpmeet for him. So we are made for relationships, and that can be very hard. Then there comes the fall, but God still loves and cares for us. God says, be content with what you have, for I will never leave you nor forsake me. So we can go very wobbly trusting God when we're in tough times. So God says these things to us because he knows that will happen. He says, be content and I am with you. So trust me because I'm the same forever. So that's what was coming to my mind as a sort of introduction. And in response to one question of Grace, which was, has God been helping you at this time? 100% of responses said, I believe and trust God. I am never alone. At times I struggle to trust God. And another one was, I tell God I cannot see the way before me. It is a blur. So those are some of the thoughts about that question. And Zoom is wonderful yet challenging, because what you see on Sunday morning is families in their own homes. You don't see that when you go to church physically. And I think that can be quite hard.
So I guess you're already sort of starting to go into the kind of question of how being on your own has its own challenges.
Yes.
A call to be able to trust God and kind of be content with the difficulties there.
Yes.
But there is a sense in which kind of COVID and this isolation has kind of maybe pronounced some of those challenges.
Yeah.
You mentioned, say, the difference of joining Zoom as someone on your own. Are
Yes.
there some other ways in which that's...
Well, I want to say that whatever's said in this interview is not meant to reflect negatively on anyone in church. It just highlights what people are feeling. And just to confirm what Robert said, living alone without the virus is challenging. Living alone with the virus all around is very, very different. And asked people, what is the hardest part of being alone at this time? Consistently, individuals said, no kisses, no hugs, no touching. Sensory deprivation, that would be in a research project. And then secondly, they said every contact with anybody is planned, purposeful, or intentional. Thus, there is the absence of casual contact when you relax together, make a meal together, chill out together. You're never in a situation where you can actually do that. And when you haven't got it, you realise how important it is. The next one is in groups and when notices are given. Sometimes you can feel very marginalised when you're on your own. And then I just thought I'd give a brief paragraph of people, which I am and which Lucy will be, and there'll be others. We have pre-existing conditions. We're very, very old, so they say we can't go out. And there are mental health issues, physical issues. Now, mental well-being has been raised in the media as something that can deteriorate in lockdown. And we are confirming that our thoughts in countdown can be ruminating, repetitive, wander, and there's difficulty in breaking that cycle. Some of the feelings in lockdown actually almost mirror symptoms we've had from or have from pre-existing illnesses, and it can be ever so difficult to separate one from the other. And then there's a whole issue that if you have a pre-existing condition, if lockdown goes, you'll be terrified to go out in case you catch the virus. And I wanted to point out that Ruth Jackson last Sunday prayed for people who lived alone, raising the profile. And I thought that's a stepping block forward in actually saying you are important to us.
Yeah. So just picking up on some of the things you said there. So in
Yeah.
terms of the kind of I don't know, even the way say we do messages like notices. Could you give us some examples of just things that we could kind of not think through the implications?
I just think it is bearing in mind all the time when you're speaking, or like Ruth praying. You almost need like a Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder saying, hold on, you better think about what this means for people living on their own. I don't think there is a directive. I think it is just to do with, let's not forget a group of people who, I think everybody's struggling. It doesn't mean that other people are not struggling, but we are focusing on people who, in the house will have no one to talk to the whole day unless somebody phones or they phone somebody. It's quite hard to describe how difficult it can be.
Ways, I suppose, then, in which we can be helping and caring. Like, I guess one basic thing we're wanting to do is kind of recognize and, in a sense, lament the hardness. Like, we can't change the situation, as we would love to be able to give people a hug, and it's kind of painful knowing that we can't do that. So I guess there is just embracing the lament with people on their own. But other ways in which we can be helping and caring?
Well, what I thought, if I go quickly I went to a friend who missionary wife in Ukraine, and interestingly, and not interestingly, there aren't many people living on their own. They're too poor to have separate houses. But the people who do live on their own, they reckon that they may never even, after COVID, venture out again. And then in Market Harborough, there are just 5 or 6 people there. And one really encouraging comment was that Christians in lockdown, I'm sure those 5 or 6 are doing well. There are others who are taking leaps forward on their journey to faith. So I thought that was rather lovely. And then there's another person who is very distressed because when she goes out, she feels she'll never be able to cope with distancing because how can she do that when she's got to hug her family? And then in Swansea, a much broader input from the church, really, because a lot of people living on their own. Initially, they set up coffee at 10:30 every morning, apart from Sunday, and that really helped. It's still going. And then they've been divided into small groups, each to be mentored by a deacon or an elder. Those elders would regularly phone these people, sort out shopping or any problems. It said to them, why don't you send people cards? Well, I got 2 cards yesterday and it was really lovely. And then they bought tablets, new tablets with sizable buttons on them.
Digital tablets.
Yes, so they could go on Zoom.
Yeah.
And 2 people in their 80s have been trained to use them.
Fantastic.
I thought that was really, really wonderful. So that was bringing in another perspective, what other churches have done.
Yeah. Is that so? Those groups, do they have home groups as well? Are they kind of on top of exist,
No,
or is that their
no,
way of
actually, they
seeking
have
to?
ladies' Bible study, prayer meeting of an evening, Bible study of an
Mm,
evening, church twice on Sunday. So I think they're not house group Zooms, they're other Zooms
I see.
of those services.
Yeah. Last question, Mary. How can we help as a church? Perhaps maybe some people are watching this video and they're thinking about what they could do. Maybe they don't have pre-existing relationships with people living on their own right now. What do you think we could do to help and care for those in that situation?
No easy answers. You asked earlier about how, what about notices? Just raise the profile of people living alone. All the same thing. Use WhatsApp video. Knock at the door as a surprise visit. Come to the door and say, we've just come to see you.
Yeah.
Then I can sit on my bench and they can sit away. Something like that.
Yeah.
It's hard because everybody is very, very busy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say two things really that I would say important. Do not wait for someone living alone to approach you. Because people say, oh, you can get in touch with me. That's not so easy, especially if it is to do with stressful things which are difficult to share. So
Mm,
sometimes at your lowest, when you're the least able to support somebody else, watch out for these people, because it may be that they are finding it very, very difficult. And then the other thing comes on the back of that. Plan to see if you can think about spending a sort of slightly longer period of time. It can be on the bench and on the pavement, or it can be a Zoom eat together, a
mm,
Zoom cook together, play games together on Zoom, creating like a relaxed, undemanding get together. Because you know what we haven't got? We have never got somebody sitting in the room and we don't need to talk, or we can quarrel, whatever. We haven't got that. And
mm.
its absence is quite acute.
Yeah.
That right?
Mhm.
Could I just say one scripture verse? Because
Yeah. No,
I think, having prayed when we started, looked about how God views loneliness, and that he is immutable, unchangeable, cannot change himself. And this is the one we must trust. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Even if it's hard, that doesn't change.
mhm.
Even if you can't trust at the moment, that doesn't change.
Hey, thank you very much, Mary. That's been really helpful.